Chapter 30. Illuminating gas. How wonderful that sunbeams absorbed by vegetation in the primordial ages of the earth and buried in its depths as vegetable fossils through immeasurable eras of time, until system upon system of slowly formed rocks have been piled above, should come forth at last, at the disenchanting touch of science, and turn the light of civilized man into day. Professor E. L. Youmans. The invention of artificial light has extended the available term of human life. By giving the night to man's use, it has, by the social intercourse it encourages, polished his manners and refined his tastes, and perhaps as much as anything else, has aided his intellectual progress. Draper. If one desires to know what the condition of cities, towns and peoples was before the 19th century had lightened and enlightened them, let him step into some poor country town in some out-of-the-way region, and such may yet be found, at night, pick his way along rough pavements, and no pavements, by the light of a smoky lamp placed here and there at corners, and of weeping lamps and limp candles in the windows of shops and houses, and meet people armed with tin lanterns throwing a dubious light across the pathways. Let him be prepared to be assailed by the odors of undrained gutters, ditches, and roads called streets, and escape, if he can, stumbling and falling into them. Let him take care also that he avoid in the darkness the drippings from the overhanging eaves or windows, and falling upon the slippery steps of the dim doorway he may be about to enter. Within, let him overlook, if he can, in the hospitable reception, the dim and smoky atmosphere, and observe that the brightest and best as well as the most cheerful illuminant flashes from the wide open fireplace. Occasionally a glowing grate might be met. The 18th century did have its glowing grates, and its still more glowing furnaces of coal in which the ore was melted and by the light of which the castings were made. It is very strange that year after year for successive generations men saw the hard black coal break under the influence of heat and burst into flames which lit up every corner, without learning, beyond sundry accidents and experiments, that this gas, or jest, or spirit, or vapor, or gas, as it was variously called, could be led away from its source, ignited at a distance, and made to give light and heat at other places than just where it was generated. Thus Dr. Clayton, Dean of Kildare, Ireland, in 1688 distilled gas from coal and lit and burned it, and told his learned friend, the Hon. Robert Boyle, about it, who announced it with interest to the Royal Society. And again it finds mention in the Philosophical Transactions 50 years later. Then, in 1726, Dr. Hales told how many cubic inches of gas a certain number of grains of coal would produce. Then Bishop Watson in 1750 passed some gas through water and carried it in pipes from one place to another. And then Lord Dundonald in 1786 built some ovens, distilled coal and tar, burned the gas, and got a patent. In the same year, Dr. Rickle of Wurzburg lighted his laboratory with gas made by the dry distillation of bones. But all these were experiments. Finally, William Murdoch, the owner of large workshops at Redrath, in Cornwall, a practical man and mechanic, and a keen observer, using soft coal to a large extent in his shops, tried with success in 1792 to collect the escaping gas and with it lit up the shops. Whether he continued steadily to so use the gas or only at intervals, at any rate it seems to have been experimental and failed to attract attention. It appears that he repeated the experiment at the celebrated steam engine works of Bolton and Watt, at Soho, near Birmingham, in 1798, and again illuminated the works in 1802, on occasion of a peace jubilee. In the meantime, in 1801, Le Bon, a Frenchman at Paris, had succeeded in making illuminating gas from wood, lit his house therewith, and proposed to light the whole city of Paris. Thus it may be said that illuminating gas and the new century were born together, former, preceding the latter a little and lighting the way. Then in 1803 the English periodicals began to take the matter up and discuss the whole subject. One magazine objected to its use in houses on the ground that the curtains and furniture would be ruined by the saturation produced by the oxygen and hydrogen, and that the curtains would have to be wrung out the next morning after the illumination. There doubtless was good cause for objection to the smoky, unpleasant-smelling light then produced. In America in 1806, David Melville of Newport, Rhode Island, lighted with gas his own house and the street in front of it. In 1813 he took out a patent and lighted several factories. In 1817 his process was applied to Beaver Tail Lighthouse on the Atlantic coast. First use of illuminating gas in lighthouses. Coal, oil and electricity have since been found better illuminants for this purpose. Murdoch, Windsor, Clegg and others continued to illuminate the public works and buildings of England. Westminster Bridge and the Houses of Parliament were lighted in 1813, and the streets of London in 1815. Paris was lighted in 1820, and the largest American cities from 1816 to 1825. But it required the work of the chemists as well as the mechanics to produce the best gas. The rod of science had touched the rock again, and from the earth had sprung another servant with power to serve mankind, and waited the skilled brain and hand to direct its course. Produced almost entirely from bituminous coal, it was found to be composed chiefly of carbon, oxygen and hydrogen, but various other gases were mixed therewith. To determine the proper proportions of these gases, to know which should be increased or wholly or partly eliminated, required the careful labors of patient chemists. They taught also how the gas should be distilled, condensed, cleaned, scrubbed, confined in retorts, and its flow measured and controlled. Fortunately, the latter part of the 18th century and the early part of the 19th had produced chemists whose investigations and discoveries paved the way for success in this revolution. In the world of light, Priestley had discovered oxygen. Dalton had divided matter into atoms, and shown that in its every form, whether solid, liquid, or gaseous, these atoms had their own independent, characteristic, unalterable weight, and that gases diffused themselves in certain proportions. Berthollet, Graham, and a host of others in England, France, and Germany, advanced the art. The highest skilled mechanics, like Clegg of England, supplied the apparatus. He it was who invented a gas purifier, liquid gas meter, and other useful contrivances. As the character of the gas as an illuminator depends on the quantity of hydrocarbon, or olefiant elements it contains, great efforts were made to invent processes and means of carbureting it. The manufacture of gas was revolutionized by the invention of water gas. The main principle of this process is the mixture of hydrogen with the vapor of some hydrocarbon. Hydrogen burns with very little light, and the purpose of the hydrocarbon is to increase the brilliancy of the flame. The hydrogen gas is so obtained by the decomposition of water, effected by passing steam through highly heated coals. Patents began to be taken out in this line in England in 1823-24, by Donovan in 1830, Gia. Lowe in 1832, and White in 1847. But in England water gas could not compete with coal gas in cheapness. On the contrary, in America, especially after the petroleum wells were opened up, and nature supplied the hydrocarbon in roaring wells and fountains, water gas came to the front. The leading invention there in this line was that of T.S. C. Lowe of Morristown, Pennsylvania, in 1873. In Lowe's process anthracite coal might be used, which was raised in a suitable retort to a great heat. Then superheated steam admitted over this hotbed and decomposed into hydrogen and carbonic oxide. Then a small stream of naphtha or crude petroleum was thrown upon the surface of the burning coal, and from these decompositions and mixtures a rich olefiant product and other light-giving gases were produced. The Franklin Institute of Philadelphia in 1886 awarded Lowe, or his representatives, a Grand Medal of Honor. His being the invention exhibited that year which in their opinion contributed most to the welfare of mankind. A number of inventors have followed in the direction set by Lowe. The largest part of gas manufacture, which has become so extensive, embodies the basic idea of the Lowe process. The competition set up by the electricians, especially in the production of the beautiful incandescent light for indoor illumination, has spurred inventors of gas processes to renewed efforts much to the benefit of that great multitude who sit in darkness until corporations furnish them with light. It was found by Siemens, the great German inventor of modern gas regenerative furnace systems, that the quality of the gas was much improved, and a greater intensity of light obtained by heating the gases and air before combustion, a plan particularly adapted in lighting large spaces. To describe in detail the large number of inventions relating to the manufacture of gas would require a huge volumetric generators, carburetors, retorts, mixers, purifiers, meters, scrubbers, holders, condensers, governors, indicators, registers, chargers, pressure regulators, etc., etc. It was a great convenience outside of towns and cities, where gas mains could not be laid, to have domestic plants and portable gas apparatus, worked on the same principles, but in miniature form, adapted to a single house. But the exercise of great ingenuity was required to render such adaptations successful. In the use of liquid illuminants, which need a wick to feed them, the Argand-Bernathat arrangement of concentric tubes between which the wick is confined, invented by Argand in 1784, yet has occupied a vast field of usefulness in connection with the lamps of the 19th century. A dangerous but very extensively used illuminating liquid before coal oil was discovered was camphene, distilled from turpentine. It gave a good light but was not a safe domestic companion. Great attention has recently been paid to the production of acetylene gas, produced by the reaction between calcium carbide and water. The making of the calcium carbide by the decomposition of mixed pulverized lime and coal by the use of a powerful electric battery is a preliminary step in the production of this gas, and was a subsequent discovery. The electric light, acetylene, magnesium, and other modern sources of light, although they may be more brilliant and intense than coal gas, cannot compete in cheapness of production with the latter. Thus far illuminating coal gas is still the queen of artificial lights. After gas was fairly started in lighting streets and buildings, its adaptation to lamps followed, and among the most noted of gas lamps is that of von Welsbach, who combined a Bunsen gas flame and a glass chimney with a mantle located therein. This mantle is a gauze-like structure made of refractory quartz, or of certain oxides, which when heated by the gas flame produce an incandescent glow of intense brilliancy, with a reduced consumption of gas.